Welcome to Vintage Weights PGH. My name is Rob, and I'm here with the one, the only Zach Evan-Esh. Welcome, Zach.
What's up, Rob? How are you, buddy?
I'm doing great. And the reason that I asked you to come on here was to talk about your new book, Iron Journeys.
Nice.
So, viewers, if you're unaware, Iron Journeys, 5 Powerful Lessons to Unleash Your True Potential in Life is the new book by Zach Evan-Esh, who has been around for quite a while in the strength game. If you missed it on Home Gym History podcast over on the Garage Gym Radio Network, I interviewed Zach about his career in lifting and as a coach, and we got into all kinds of stuff on there. It was a fun interview. So I'll drop a link in the description for that Home Gym History episode, but stick around here on Vintage Weights PGH to hear a little more about this new book, because I just picked it up. I zipped through it in like a day and a half. I couldn't put it down. My kids kept asking, like, what are you reading, Dad? What is that? Hey, why is that kid looking at that big guy? And I promised them I'd ask you about the cover. I'm pretty sure I know about the cover, but we'll get into that too. So I guess a good place to start would be, so that I don't bore my viewers with just reading the back of the book, could you just put in a couple words? Like, what's the book about, Zach?
Yeah. Well, the feedback has been so great, like kind of a lot of words like what you're saying. So I actually wrote the book. Well, it started as an email. You texted me a few minutes ago. I'm like, hey, I'm just finishing up my morning email. So I send out an email, usually Monday through Friday morning. Strength training tips, muscle building tips, stories that I've experienced from teenage years to current years. And so one day I was like, man, I'm bored of my own writing. I'm bored of talking about strength tips. Let me share a story where somebody taught me a lesson of strength. So I can't remember if it was, there's many stories. So maybe it was a story from the YMCA. Maybe it was a story from the local gym I used to train out of, where the guy welded all of the equipment and everything was deep dish Ivankos. So what I wanted to do was blend nonfiction stories with a little bit of fiction, meaning if I went through an experience and I didn't kind of grasp it at a young age, and so the outcome wasn't as good as I wish it could have been, I tweaked that story so the outcome was better, so the lesson was grasped. And I wanted it to be a book for guys like us, guys in their 30s, 40s, 50s. There's men that are in their 60s who have read the book. And I also wanted it to be for the teenagers out there. Although, I have 2 teenage kids, it's like, man, getting them to read a book is actually not so easy. But so basically it's stories where each story has lessons of training and life. And speaking of like books that inspire, so I'm a full-time high school strength coach, and the incoming freshman started training 3 weeks ago. And in our Google Classroom, I posted 3 PDFs. And so I have dinosaur training, super squats, and Steel Reflections by Jim Steele. And Jim Steele's book, really under the radar. He doesn't have it on Amazon. It's an ebook. It's all these stories of him training from the younger years all the way through being a collegiate strength coach, stories of like eating certain foods, playing football, different workouts they experimented with. So they were like, can we, read any of them for summer reading? I said, oh yeah. I said, if you legitimately read any of those books front to back, yeah, I'll sign off on it. So my goal really is to inspire all the generations, because we all need it. The younger generation really needs it. The older guys who might be wavering in motivation are going to read it and be like, oh, I remember having, this kind of guy in my gym when I was a kid. And so it's not very thick, like you said, but the original book is, I'll show you the original, is actually really big. And so my buddy, Chris, he helped me with editing, and he said, listen, so many of these stories have a lot of overlap in the lessons. He's like, I think you should just kind of break it up, do 5 chapters or
Yeah.
4 chapters, whatever's in there. He's like, then down the road, the stuff we didn't use, that becomes part 2. And I started thinking to myself, people don't read like they once did. So let me put together a smaller book, and something like what you said, somebody could read
Mhm.
it in a day or a day and a half. I didn't put it on Kindle yet because I wanted the book to have the smell. So like I have
Yeah.
look at these old books I got from,
Oh yeah.
so
Nice.
I picked up some of these on eBay.
I
And
just saw you post about the
yeah,
Hoffman books you grabbed. That's awesome.
it
Look at that.
smells. It
Yeah.
smells like an original old book that was stuck in somebody's basement who was,
Yeah.
maybe lifting in the 60s.
I've got my books, the rafters, the way they go into the walls that I installed,
Yeah,
because this now is a finished basement, but didn't used
right.
to be. There's like a natural shelf up top in the
Yeah.
rafters, and that's where my books go. And then I got a lot of my old strength magazines right behind my rack, where there's like not a usable space and no one's usually standing
Yes.
back there. So no, this will be right in there and kind of gaining that vintage iron scent
Oh,
to it.
I'm so excited. Yeah. So a friend of mine who I met, through like following on social,
Mhm.
she owns some businesses and bought a farm up in Lancaster, like the Amish area. And because that's like near York, she's like, you'll be quite amazed what you'll find at a garage sale in York, PA. She's
Wow.
like, I
Yeah.
bought those books. She goes, do you have any use for them? So she sent them to me. She may have bought them for
Amazing.
$1 or
Yeah.
$2.
Yeah.
On
Oh, that's
eBay, they
awesome.
might be $100.
Yeah, that's the stuff I dream about when I walk around. Like there's a Trader Jack's flea market here in Pittsburgh. And when I'll
Yes.
go out there early on like a Saturday morning or something occasionally, that's what I dream of when I see like a cardboard box of books and I'm kind of rooting through.
Well, Rob, you know where in the final chapter or the ultimate chapter with the
Yeah.
Ultimate Warrior, they're training in King's Gym. And
Yes.
so, like I said, the stories are part fiction, part nonfiction. Well,
Sure.
I had heard of King's Gym in Pittsburgh I may have like heard of it in like 1990 when I was watching that TV show American Muscle Magazine. Well,
Okay.
the gym was owned by Kim King and her husband. I became a professional bodybuilder, and they owned a gym in Pittsburgh. And I had heard of when I remember, see, I still remember this 1990, maybe 1991. They were talking about how she could squat 315 for 20.
Ooh,
And I think she's retired, but Kim got into strength and conditioning. She was the strength coach at Pitt for Olympic sports. So
nice.
you might be able to look her up and find some
Yeah.
stories. But I had, when I trained at Diamond Gym, if you entered from the back, you went down these kind of like crummy stairs.
Yeah.
Same thing when I trained in Israel at Avner's Gym. You went down the stairs and there was always like posters. And so going downstairs to enter an old school style gym is like you hear the music, you start feeling the energy, the photos and posters on the
Hmm.
wall start kind of sending you this, message.
And that
And
whole
yeah,
kind of
so
ambiance, that
that's
whole
right.
vibe.
Yeah, and you
Yeah.
could literally feel it. So I wanted people to feel it
Sure.
from the book. And of course, I wanted this younger generation to feel what the gyms were like of the 80s and early 90s before kind of fitness became this, thing. And it's sad because a lot of those early day gyms that I trained out of closed, went out of business, didn't have the business knowledge to keep it going. The one that's still going is the one that used to be by my first gym called Apollon Gym.
Mm.
And if the new owner, Robert, didn't take over, he bought that gym a few months after I rented my space. If he didn't go in with his vision for bodybuilding, that gym would have probably put itself out of business.
I mean, you mentioned dinosaur training. Yeah, all the gyms, Uncle Tony's, all the different gyms that you
Yeah.
describe in the book are, I think Brooks Cubic would be okay with. They're not, no ferns,
Right.
no
Well,
abundance of chrome machines and things. Yeah.
do you know, hate to cut you off, Rob, but there's so
No, go
much
for it.
like it's
Yeah.
so I think I posted it on Instagram. I can't remember. Do you know where Uncle Tony came from? Do you know who that's in reference to?
I had some suspicions, like as I was.
Who do you think it is, just with your knowledge? Like, who do you think Uncle Tony would be?
Well, for viewers, I mean, I should preface this by saying I'm not going to retell the whole book. So if you're a
Right.
cheapskate listening to this, just go spend, I think it was $16. Go spend the $16 and read the book.
I wonder if they'll discount it with Amazon Prime Day coming.
Oh, that's true. July 11th and 12th. This will be out by then. I'll get this out by Prime Day. So maybe they'll discount it. Nice. I'll drop a link for the book in the description, and that'll help out Zach if you use the link, and it'll help out me because it's through my Amazon account. Nice. So see, we're killing two birds with one stone. But enough promotion here. Back to the Uncle Tony's Highway Gym.
Who do you think that is?
I had, it depended on the moment. Like whenever he was going through like the training of you, I heard a lot of Brooks Cubic. I heard because I read Dinosaur Training a couple times now.
Yep.
But then fast forward when he was getting into like the training, when he was saying those things to you as far as pushing it and all that stuff. But then when you started talking about the lifts and things, that started kind of going away from Brooks and thinking about other coaches / weightlifters. So, I mean, is it a mashup of a couple, or is it a singular influence?
Yeah, I mean, it's always kind of like a mix up, but
okay.
I just want to hear like what you think, you know, because you're pretty knowledgeable. Give me one name besides Brooks Cubic.
Besides Brooks Cubic. Okay. Well, actually, the problem is when I'm researching something, I steep myself with it. I'm in it, like, you know, from head down to toe. So recently, since I had CT Fletcher on, I was just CT Fletcher night and day listening to his stuff. So then I hear some of him in there, but CT's more of a motivator along with a coach. But then along with that, I've been researching a lot of grip strength stuff, Richard Soren. So then I'm listening to a ton of Richard Soren and his interviews. And even just catching little bits, like you interviewed Ivan from Ivanko years ago, and he mentioned Richard Soren, and he mentioned how Richard lugged all the stuff for the big Kentucky room across the field.
Oh my God, I actually have that. I did a podcast with Pops on that. So you know.
So I started to picture Richard Soren a lot too. That was my other guy, which you may not hear from people, but that also might just be because I'm steeped in researching him.
Pops is a Jersey guy. And where I used to live in Edison, where he grew up until he moved to South Carolina, he would have been about a 25-minute ride from me. He was actually in the neighboring town of Diamond Gym. He was in Hillside. So I spoke with Pops at Summer Strong, and, you know, I told him I drove by his old house, and so Hillside's just not like the best area anymore. Heartbreaking. And also, you know, you mentioned CT Fletcher. Like, I wonder, like, his influences being a West Coast guy must have been, I forget that bodybuilder, Craig Munson was probably
heavy.
That was a big influence.
Big influence.
So Uncle Tony is Anthony Datillo.
There you go. So that's a connection to Pops.
There you go. Absolutely. So I never knew he was referenced as Uncle Tony. I always called him Anthony Datillo. And my friend, Evan Marcus, who's a strength coach in the NFL right now, he's with Arizona. But before that, he was with the Browns. And so Evan's been in strength training. He's a little bit older than me. If I'm 47, maybe he's 52, something like that. So Evan told me, he's like, oh, yeah, I trained at this gym on Route 22. And I have trained at a Gold's Gym on Route 22. But he named a gym. And then some guy that was in there mentoring him, they referenced him as Uncle Tony, not Anthony. I had never heard of him referenced as Uncle Tony. And when I first opened the Underground Strength Gym in Edison, 2007, and Anthony Datillo Jr. was training at Apollon Gym, and he stopped by. And
he's like, very accomplished too.
That's right. But he's very under the radar. You know, his father was selling books. If you look at like your old magazines, in the back, they always had classified ads. And Anthony Sr. was selling his books or workouts, and you could send him a check for whatever, a money order for, I don't know, $2.95. and get a program. So Evan had told me about all the mentoring that Uncle Tony gave him about the power rack training and the partials and things like that. And there were actually some guys like that training out of the first two gyms, Apollo Gym, Dynamic Fitness. So I blended my stories and experiences together, and then I gave some fictional names. And then the other thing is, like, some of the guys that I've written about, they passed away. Anthony DiTillo has passed away, but that's the other thing is, like, I would change names because some of those guys passed away, and some of them in not the best of ways, and so but that's always been part of the Iron game. Like Bill Peanuts West, when they found him, I think they found him like in some park, and supposedly like he had overdosed on drugs. So that's kind of been like, there's not always a happy ending to things.
That balance.
Right. And so I try to finish on a positive for each story because, this book, of course, is something I wish I had as a kid. But there's been a lot of influences going into that book. Even the books I read, like Arnold's Education of a Bodybuilder, like breaking, no rules training is something I started talking about, in my early years on the internet. So let's say 21 years ago, when Arnold would go out into the woods with 250 pounds of weights and squat for 50 sets, he called it like breaking the rules or no rules training. But then you have super training, where Dr. Mel Siff calls it imperfect training, like training with from different angles and not perfect equipment, which would fit in with dinosaur training.
Odd objects. Sure.
I have certainly never invented any of these things, but I just share all these lessons. It's cool, man, to see people fired up about it.
I am, because it's a good example, talking about like the Uncle Tony story and talking about like who I was picturing in my head. Since you did kind of make this mashup of your influences and the people in your lives, it has the same effect, at least in my experience, on the reader, that you end up thinking about in your head all these different people or all these different kind of voices, or picturing different people, I guess you could say, because when I read, I'm picturing someone. So with Uncle Tony, kind of the blend of like the calmness and then the fury is what made me think of like Pops, or made me think of Brooks, because Brooks is so calm in his posts and things, but on the other hand, he's so furious and engaged and intense.
See his so in the early 2000s, I purchased from Brooks's website VHS tapes that he had. And he was training in his basement or garage, backyard, and then like the driveway, like throwing kegs, or he had a log that was gifted to him. I think the log was gifted to him by Dr. Ken Leisner or possibly Kim Wood. And so he was like putting chains around the log to lift it. And when he was doing that, I was training athletes out of my backyard. And so I was like, I got to get
there's a connection,
the sandbags. I got to get the kegs. So Brooks was very calm and an intellectual. He was an attorney.
Pops, has a lot of connections to you. Richard Soren, educator, getting into just you buying Sorenex equipment, one of your big step ups in terms of your gym. I remember talking with you about that on Home Gym History podcast. But it's the characters you have in here. You did a great job, I think, of endearing them to the reader. That, like, in the first chapter, Trucker John is kind of the Yoda, the guru of the chapter, and the main character is a young boy. And you were mentioning the kind of the dark side of the Iron game and of the fitness and kind of strength gyms and things that, unfortunately, some people, you mentioned Bill Peanuts West and his unfortunate passing. Some people go a dark path, and that whole time I'm thinking, reading that story, oh man, it really connected me with Trucker John. I'm thinking, oh, please don't go down a wrong road for this poor kid. Like, don't reveal some horrible thing to this like poor kid. And I don't want to give anything away. Like I said, viewers, please go out and read it yourself. But I'll just say that as a compliment to you, you get invested in these characters as you read them, and the lessons that are coming about. Yeah, at this point in my life, I'm 42. I'm pretty good with the good old 5x5.
Right.
But it served as a great reminder So immediately, like just this morning, it's Monday morning here in Pittsburgh. I'm back into the gym and training, and I'm fired up because I just finished reading this, last
Oh,
week.
Rob,
So
what squat rack do you have there?
this is a Rogue. This is a Rogue Monster Light.
Oh, Monster Light. So
Yeah, yeah.
it's a cage or a
It's
half?
a No, it's a cage. It's a full rack, four
Yeah.
posts. Monster Light is just their 5/8 instead of 1-inch holes. The Monster series is the
Oh,
full 1-inch holes. And at the time that I bought it, I didn't see a reason to spend extra money. And like other people that have bought the Monster Light, I'm now rethinking that. So we'll
I see
see.
you have the Massonomics cup holder. Is
Oh,
that what you
of
have?
course. Yes. And then I've got my water here in the Drink Spotter Light. Their
Oh,
new
there you go.
their new one. This is the light
Those
version. It's
those
half the
guys are so
price.
funny, man. They're
And
hilarious.
half the price, yet all the safety.
That's
Drink
right.
safety.
Those guys are hilarious, man. They are funny.
Well, I mean, on a serious note, this Drink Spotter Light, the reason I like it a lot is that the vintage that I call it, Drink Spotter, goes into your rack, but this one has a big magnet. So
Yeah.
I move it around my gym with me, and I never spill my water. I never spill my protein shake. If I'm over by the dumbbell rack, I slap this sucker on the dumbbell rack and put it in. So for podcasts, I slap it right here on my rack and I'm good. So yeah,
That is perfect.
I think it's underrated. It's a underrated little product for your home gym.
Yeah.
And it's steel, quality made here in the United States.
You know what's funny is this morning I was programming for I have an online program with Train Heroic. Well, it was originally called Garage Gym Gladiators.
Okay.
And I must have started that thing it seems so long ago, maybe 10 years ago. I can't even remember, 8 years ago. It's been a long time. And so I remember back then being like, not too many people train in their garage. It's just not a thing.
Yeah.
And so I changed the name, I don't know how long ago, to Gladiator Strong, because it was like, more of a mindset.
Mhm.
I'm a gladiator in the garage. And it's so funny to like just think of how I was saying, people just aren't going to be training in their garage. And then it just started building up steam and
Oh,
steam.
yeah.
And then, of course, COVID, everybody's like, I'll never go back to a quote unquote
Yep.
normal gym again. And so some of the memes I'm coming across is I saw a recent, I don't know if it's called, it's like one of those, it's like a video meme
Oh,
on
sure.
Instagram. And the dad like sets up a bedroom with like a squat rack and a bench.
Yeah.
But then the top half is like a scene from a movie. And he's like, Dad, this is your dream. He's like, son, I built this dream for you. He's like, but it's your dream, Dad. And I'm like,
Exactly.
oh, God. The internet is so like the people who come up with that stuff is so funny. So the dad,
it
built
hits
the home
home.
gym.
Yeah. It hits
laughing.
home. Yeah.
I was laughing so hard at that. He's like, this is your dream, Dad.
Oh, I've outgrown my home gym for sure. So as my family deals with various strength related items kind of creeping into the rest of the house and into the garage and other places of the house, I could see that meme hitting home that yeah, they're like, why is this dumbbell in the living room? Why is this,
there's
whatever
weights
gripper sitting over here?
Right. I got grippers here on my desk. I'm in the
Yeah.
basement here. So I just spoke with Ivan at Ivanko, Ivan
Okay.
Lintz here, and I bought my son a pair of, I think I bought 20s, not 25s, 20-pound dumbbells to do recovery work because he plays baseball. So I said, Ethan,
Perfect.
we'll get you these dumbbells. You'll put them on the floor and you could do like some rear delts, curls, triceps, just like pump up work. So I
get the blood flowing.
Get the blood flow. So I order from Ivan. I'm like, Ivan. So Ivan, when I bought dumbbells from him, he had like thicker diameter. They're not 2-inch, but they're not whatever the normal is. They fit perfectly. And so I'm a big fan of all the thick grip training.
Yeah.
So that's what my son's going to get. I can't remember if I ordered 25s. I think I ordered 20s, just so
That'll
it's light enough to do a lot of high rep pump up work.
Well, their older
recovery.
Cast iron dumbbells had a thicker handle. And
So
yeah, I could see that.
You mean the hex ones?
No, prior to that, they were more of a bun style Ivanko made.
Bun
and
style, okay.
There's also a generic line of them that aren't Ivanko's, but basically look like the older Ivanko ones.
Yeah.
That I have 45-pound and 50-pounders that I'm actually working on right now in the garage.
Oh, send me a photo
And
of them.
they
I
have
wanna
about
see 'em.
2-inch thick handles, and they're pretty cool.
Wow.
And
I
the
love that.
45-pound has one of them has a hole in the bottom, older weights, dumbbells and
Yes.
stuff. It was probably like a casting flaw that then got revealed as someone dropped it. So I'm using some JB Weld and kind of working on restoring it and getting it back up to shape.
That's interesting.
So
I
they
have,
should be finished soon, but I can shoot you a picture of them. They're pretty
yeah,
cool.
I would love to see that. The first pair of 80-pound York globes that I picked up must have had I guess I'm not so like good with this stuff, but like an
It's all
air
good.
pocket, because there's
Yeah.
little like there's a hole in each
Uh-huh.
of them. It makes them unique. And I
It
remember
does.
the trip to buy them because
Mhm.
I had gotten rear-ended waiting to go into my gym. It's on this like 2-lane, very tight highway. I got rear-ended. So my truck was in the shop. So I had a loaner, and it was a GMC Acadia. And I remember driving into like the Princeton area early in the morning to get those 80-pounders.
Yeah.
And I may have bought them from eBay back when eBay was more garage sale, like meaning you
Sure.
could do a lot of picking up locally. And the fog was so crazy. I remember like I couldn't see more than like 25, 30 feet ahead of me. And I was running the gym Saturday morning at 9 a.m. So I think I hit the road at 7 a.m., got to this place at 7:45, drove him back. And then I remember when I got to my gym, I still remember like the sun was so strong it like broke through the fog. And that was like I was like the iron
Yeah. Yeah.
gods. The
Angels are singing.
Yeah, I'm pulling out the 80-pound dumbbells from the
Oh,
back, and
that's
I'm like,
great.
so when Dave Tate had me on Table Talk
Yeah.
in January, he didn't realize what he was saying, and I guess I didn't realize what I was saying. He's like, "So Zach, did the Iron Gods send a message to you?" And I was like, "Oh my God, I must sound like some sort of a preacher."
Yeah.
Talk
Yeah.
about the Iron Gods.
Well, there's this you're talking about stories and you're telling the stories in Iron Journeys. And I always say it that weights have a story, and the weights to my gym that I know the personal history behind, even if and I'm not even talking about something that has like a celebrity connection or something. I just mean like the former owner, it has a really cool history. I value those more. I think it's really cool. Like these, actually I gotta lean the right way. These made in Poland chrome plate.
Yeah.
I got one hanging behind me. I'm working on them now. They came from Coach Mess, John Messinger in West Virginia. He ran a powerlifting gym there, and the family was so kind to me. I bought them, and then I figured out who they were, and there was some personal effects. So I got the personal effects back to the family, and I hung on to the weights. But then they were so kind to me, and his widow even sent me some pictures of him like deadlifting with them. And I mean, to the people that he touched and the people that he really affected positively, I'm sure he's a huge influence on them. But on a national scope or international scope, you're not really going to find him in like a strength book
I
that
remember his
often.
name though.
But
He was a
he
powerlifting?
was a power lifter, and he definitely was on a national stage in terms of lifting. And
John
he set
Messenger.
some masters records and things. But I'll have a full video out with the plates once I finish them. But what I'm getting at though is that by themselves, yeah, sure, they're collectible, valuable, vintage, really cool Russian style, only Polish, so made by Polsport plates. But the value to them to me is the story behind them as well. The man that owned them and lifted them, and where they've been. They were in this
Yeah.
gym, like the gyms in your book.
I wonder where he got them from,
So
where he ordered them
he
from.
the family told me that he got them from his partner, his business partner, and that's where the mystery continues. I
Where
don't
were
know
they?
where.
West Virginia?
West Virginia.
Isn't that where the Wild Bunch was from? The powerlifting crew? Or were they
Yes,
Virginia?
and apparently his gym that he ran had quite a few notable names, because when I posted these plates, that's when I learned how much he was admired. Because when I posted these plates to like some of the vintage groups on Facebook and said, "Hey, check out what I picked up today," I was flooded with messages of people saying right away, recognizing, oh my gosh, that was my coach's, or I went to that gym. He was the best. Like, you gotta like reach out. You gotta tell his family you got these. Like, and I was like, yeah, sure. Like, I plan to. And
Well,
yes,
how did you come across them so far away?
the
Facebook
classic
or?
the classic used market. I was surfing the Facebook marketplace, and there it was. And some guy who buys a bunch of like storage containers, you know, that people might rent.
Oh yeah.
Same like the TV show Storage Wars. You ever see
Yeah.
that, where they
Yes.
bid on it?
Sure.
Yep, and they bid on them. Well, there's this guy about an hour and a half from me that I figured out once I got there. Oh, wait, this is what this guy does for a living. He buys up those storage containers, kind of like that TV show, and then he sells the stuff in them. So he didn't know what he was even looking at. I mean, the
They
equipment,
think it's just junk.
yeah, he opened it up and posted it for sale. And I mean, his backyard had like, you know, a dining room set over here from one container.
Sure.
It had like, you know, a whole thing of toys over here from another storage container. So he was just flipping and reselling stuff.
I know I didn't go this weekend. It's hard to get because I'm always traveling on the weekend for my kids' sports, but there's a flea market about 10-minute drive from me. And they do Saturday, Sunday. I don't think they do Friday, but some guys have weights. So, or books. So
Sure.
one of the one guy had a bunch of books out. He had the Weeder bodybuilding approach, but I have that book, so I didn't buy it. But I'm going there on the regular, hoping because they do estate sales, or they do what this guy does, where they buy a storage container, storage garage, and they put it in a trailer, and they just lay it out and sell stuff for pennies on the dollar. Rob? What's behind to my left, behind your right shoulder? What are those
the attachments?
Yeah, where are they from?
That's the top one is from a current company, Belt Fed Strength. Here, I'll grab them just a second.
I'm turning the tables.
This is Belt Fed Strength, and this one, oh, it's heavy. So this one is Belt Fed Strength, and they're around now. Chris and Randy are coming on Home Gym History, actually, in just a week.
Belt? How do I say belt? Belt fit or bell?
Belt fed, like a belt fed machine gun.
Yeah.
Chris was in the Marines, once a Marine, always a Marine. And he is a veteran, and he and his wife sell the best weightlifting belts you'll ever see. They are extraordinary. I've shown mine a bunch, but I'll grab it and show it to you here. They're pieces of artwork, but they're also just functionally amazing. That's the benefit of a small gym. I can just reach around and grab stuff. So yeah, his wife does a lot of the artwork, and so does he, but this isn't just painted. Like, they carve this in, like Globe Dumbbells, PGH, my logo. They put their logo on.
Will that fade off or no? They
put some type of you know, like cover, like, I don't know if it's like some type of spray or something, but they put like a protectant on top of it. I'm sure if you scraped it hard enough, it wouldn't be a good thing.
I'd love to buy one of those for my son.
But I mean, the quality though this is cut by hand, sewn by hand. The inside, they did like a dark blue suede, yellow stitching to match my logo, like down to everything. And they take your exact measurements, so it's not like a size large, size
where are
whatever.
They located?
They are in Tennessee.
Oh, cool.
And they have
notes
a shop set up in their basement, and they're just an extraordinary couple and just really fun. And they do a lot of great stuff. And this is their attachment that I love. They use this, I'm going to screw up the name, but the type of leather they use on the inside, they put a lot of thought into, so that it's tough enough to hold on to, but it's a little softer and kind of works in as you use it.
That's amazing.
So I've been using this for a couple months now, and I mean, it's the perfect.
And what do you have? Do you do like a spud ink attachment?
I have another Tennessee company, actually, Surplus Strength. They make a UPS attachment, and that's actually the next episode. I'm doing a lot of Home Gym History podcast plugs here. It's because I interview the people that I use their products. Well, I have a UPS. It's Ultimate Pulley.
Yes.
I'm sorry, Universal Pulley System. And Jason at Surplus Strength, I have the history of pulley machines coming out next week. That's our next
wow.
episode, I believe, or maybe 2 weeks. And it attaches to your rack. So for a small gym, it's perfect. It attaches to your rack. And then unlike the ones that are just like pulleys, since it's a plus sign shape and solid steel, it will eliminate the swinging back and forth. It keeps it nice and solid.
I'm gonna check it out because,
So yeah,
you know,
it's a slick product.
I don't have machines in my gym. If I had a bigger space, I would get, you know, a cable crossover unit to get some bodybuilding work in. My buddy Joe is on the board of advisors. My buddy Joe is his company's called Varsity House. His gym is right over the border of New Jersey. It's in Orangeburg, New York. So he's on the advisory board for the exercise science department in a nearby college. He helped them redo their weight room, and they had old machines from like the 90s.
Yeah.
And so they just gave him the machines, like the old pec deck and this and that. And he said, you know what? For our clients who are in their 50s and 60s, they like some pump up work. They like some bodybuilding work. And I tell you what, I'm not in my 50s yet, but I would like to do some of that. So if
this one,
what
this is
that?
the
That's a beauty.
This one you're not going to find as easy. Belt Fed and Surplus Strength are current companies. This one, Bruce Pearson is the inventor of it, and he is the founder and owner of Criterion arm bars. And Criterion arm bars, I just posted, I have one, are really hard to find now. He made them back in the 80s to 90s. And then Criterion arm bars hooked up with Rich Gasperi and came out with the Gasperi bar.
Guy. Richie used to train out of that first gym I went to.
So then the Gasperi bar is what most people call it because of the, you know, the popularity of Rich Gasperi. But Criterion is the maker of it. And Bruce Pearson I've become friends with, and he's down in Arkansas, and he'd like to bring some more back to the market. He's kind of working on that right now. So he just got like a Instagram account and stuff like that.
Oh, I saw it.
I've been sharing it, Criterion bars. But this is his attachment. It's the same handle and bearings and just like smooth rotation.
I had one
of
not
the bar. Only you hook it up, and it's so versatile because, you know, you can do so many different things with the handles. And I like doing rows with it. I'll hook up a lower pulley and do rows. I like to do all the arm work, obviously, biceps, triceps.
The black handle is awesome.
Yeah. So this is a vintage bar that then he put his newer handles on and sent to me once we kind of started talking and became friends.
I had the Gasperi curl bar, and I sold it during COVID. And it was extremely rusted, but the way you were just spinning your handles, it was still spinning so smooth. And so I sold like old shit so I could kind of revamp our high school weight room and put more money into it. But
it's my favorite. I love it.
It's crazy how hard they are to find. But Richie, I remember seeing his curl bar in the magazines, you know, definitely by like the early 90s, maybe even the 80s. So that he would kill it if he could make a comeback with that. They were so, I'm telling you, this thing was so rusted, Rob, but you would spin it and it would just go.
I believe it. I mean, he made the Criterion bars by hand, like everything, like a jig in his garage, like he made them and welded them. And then once the Gasperi bar, he hooked up with them, then it was kind of made off-site at a factory, that kind of thing. But they're quality made, and Bruce knows what he's doing. So I'm hoping he can bring some more bars back to market. But he, like the gyms you mentioned in your book, he would go from gym to gym, and he'd go in with the bar, not presenting himself as a salesman. He'd just go in with the bar and start using it. He'd buy like a guest pass for the day. And it was so different that naturally people would start coming over.
Yeah.
And he told me this story. I loved it. And they'd come over. Hey, what is that? Hey, can I try that? And he'd say, yeah, sure. And then next thing you know, he'd talk to the gym owner and say, well, you know, I happen to have this for sale.
Yeah.
And that's how he sold them. He went gym to gym. That's how he got his start.
See,
and then that led to like trade shows and everything else. But that was the beginning of Criterion.
Being a businessman, an entrepreneur 30 years ago, you needed to do that. Like the
Yeah.
guy who invented T-grip barbell. I think he has American Barbell sells them, but he
Mhm.
said I would just take these. He's from Long
Yeah.
Island, Tim, T-grip Tim, and go into the gyms. And that's not long ago, but 30 years ago, you had to go into you had to like it was like a legitimate door-to-door salesman. And
Yeah.
what a great way, that he did it. Even, thinking of like who's making equipment from their house. Pops would buy equipment from Andy Jackson, and
Yeah.
Andy had the basement, and then there was like a belt that like pushed them out into a
Through the
truck.
coal, through the coal
Yeah,
chute. Yeah, because like
yes,
older houses, the house I grew up with had one that
crazy.
older houses would have like a little chute, a little door that the coal for your furnace in the basement could be dumped through. That way you didn't get your house dirty. You didn't have to lug coal through your
Got to
house.
be, and I think like a blue collar area. So you're in
Exactly.
Pittsburgh.
Yep.
Andy Jackson was Springfield, New Jersey. This kind of stuff was probably happening in like the Lehigh Valley of
Sure.
Pennsylvania. You were mentioning where you're Virginia. So I will be going to Georgia, and we stay in Virginia, in the Virginia Tech area.
Okay.
Now it reminded me to reach out to Mike Gentry,
All right.
because they had those York plates that said VT on them.
They sure
And,
did.
and I
Yeah.
think Pops
With the custom
with the
line in the
design.
90s. Yeah.
So I have to ask him, Iron Mike,
Yeah.
please, I beg you. I
You
beg
can
you
add those to
to.
your Iron Islands. Yeah.
Yeah, trust me, I was already envisioning it. So I'm going
Yeah.
to message him on Facebook after this, Iron Mike.
I have the Naval Academy Beat Army plates. Actually, they're behind me.
Beautiful.
The lighting's not that great, but they're up over here.
They're beautiful. Blue,
So
yeah,
yeah,
blue and yellow.
blue and yellow. Yeah. So I'm a
Yeah,
veteran. I like the
amazing.
military connection, and
Yeah.
the blue and yellow is the same as my logo. So I had to pick those up. And I that's from the 90s custom collection or design from New York. And I think they're cool. It's a little piece of history. And I think it's cool that the Naval Academy had Beat Army on their plates. That's like
Talk about
when they're pumping up. Yeah. Beat Army.
I could only imagine, especially back then, like the sound of those plates
Oh yeah.
rumbling. And
Clanging.
you know what I've seen floating around? So my buddy Joe Connolly, he's at Arizona State now, but before that, he was at Boston. And he said when he went to Boston and started setting up the weight room, he opened a storage closet, and he sent me a photo of like the mother load of chrome Eleiko. I think they're chrome Eleiko Boston College.
Sure.
Those are floating around on Facebook for sale, as are those.
I've seen UMass
Yep,
ones
UMass.
of those floating around.
So
that
somebody
basically
bought
the colleges got rid of them.
That's right.
Someone probably got them for nothing.
Exactly. He sent me a photo because he knows I love that stuff.
Goodness.
He's like, Zach, I'm going through storage closets here. And he's like, I came across the mother load. So they used them.
And those are calibrated.
They're beautiful. My buddy Jason Spray, who was at University of Middle Tennessee, he had them in chrome. And then Texas Longhorns, UT.
Yeah.
Texas also had them.
Someone just posted those on a Facebook group, the UT ones, the Texas ones. Yeah. So Eleiko clearly did this, big business.
Now people sell them. So it seems like somebody left the college, and then somebody behind the scenes just took them all. Maybe they legitimately took them, sold them, because they were just sitting in a storage closet, and the college was like, oh, we just use bumper plates now.
I bet you Pops or Bert over at Sorinex would know a lot about that, because I mean they did so much and do so much.
Sure they have
with their university and college stuff, but back in the day they didn't make their own plates. I don't think they just did all the equipment. So I bet you they did partnerships.
Yeah, those the Texas plates are at Sorinex, if I recall correctly. They've got a couple of them.
I'm willing to bet back in like the 90s, for example, once they took off in the late 80s, Sorinex, and then in the 90s when they were doing big universities and stuff for the first kind of go around of things, they probably partnered with Eleiko or did simultaneous contracts and things like that, where Eleiko did all the weights and they did. I mean, maybe not. Maybe I'm completely wrong, but it would make sense since they didn't have their own plates.
Would love to
So,
hear the
yeah,
story. So
we got to ask we got to ask the Soren guys whether
we got to
that's
ask
true or not.
Pops.
Yeah.
I love his
Well,
stories.
in my mind, Pops was Uncle Tony for a while there. Trucker John, to me, was Randy Macho Man Savage. So later on in the book, I was like, oh, wait, I guess Trucker John wasn't him, but that's who Trucker John was to me.
Cool. Trucker, Randy Macho Man, by the way. So I live in a little beach town. And when I opened my first gym, kids that were training with me, one of them his family had a beach house in an area called Seaside. And they said when they would go around on the boat, they said Macho Man had a beachfront home, and they would see him outside and they'd be like, Macho Man, and he would take cap guns and shoot them in the air.
That's amazing.
So and then I wasn't out with my family. They went out to eat at a popular pizzeria in this area called Pete and Elda's. And my wife said she saw Macho Man because my father-in-law recognized him. He was sitting eating pizza with his girlfriend or wife.
Yeah.
So Trucker John was inspired by, I believe this was the summer before sophomore year. I was training at the YMCA. And on Saturday mornings, it was just really quiet. And I got there pretty early. I don't know when they opened, but I think I would get there around 8 a.m.-ish. And I remember this trucker, and I don't want to mention his for nobody would know, but I don't want to mention his name. So anyway, he was in there lifting, and he was a legit truck driver. He'd always park his truck like out front or in the parking lot. And I remember he was curling a plate, and when he was done, he left it there. And then these other two bigger guys tried curling it, and they couldn't like curl it. And now I think to myself, like, curling a plate is so easy, but I think when I was a kid, I would be curling a 10, and a 5.
Sure.
So they're like, oh man, that's a bad man right there. And so Trucker John, I actually knew him and trained his son down the road, and there was a lot of connections with that. And I actually remember my wrestling coach's father was chief of police, and they told me that they used to like arrest him on weekends for bar brawls, like beating people,
getting in trouble.
But they would just kind of like get him to calm down, and they would always send like extra guys to to handle him.
You need some backup for that call.
Yep. And so I just remember him curling heavy, and always with construction gloves on, which people don't realize. Like,
you mentioned that in the book.
It makes it harder. You think it's easier, but like the gloves don't allow you to really grip as tight because the glove is stiff, and so now it's a little bit looser in your hands. But there were a lot of guys in that YMCA. Big George is somebody that I think is in the next one. He was, I've written.
You mentioned him in here, but then don't go too far in depth. So I assume he's one of the later stories. Will be in the next volume.
I can't even remember if I wrote about it.
Yeah. Well, you've probably read it 20 times, editing and whatever else.
This book. I started writing it during COVID. Because at the school we had half days. So I was like, all right, every day I have to write at least 2 pages.
Yeah.
And Stephen Pressfield spoke about somebody that had a full-time job that wrote for 1 hour a day. That was his thing, 1 hour a day. And that 1 hour a day, 365 days a week came out to thousands or whatever, 365 hours. And it just compiled. So I was like, I have to get disciplined with this. Writing it was really hard because of the constant editing. There's probably still grammatical errors in there, but also
I didn't find too many.
I try not to make it this perfectly edited book, because sometimes when I'm explaining something, if the grammar is off, it's supposed to be off in a way to make the message more powerful. When my friend and editor Chris went through it, he'd put it in a Word document with all these notes. I was like, Chris, I don't even know what the fuck just happened. Like all those notes. I was like,
you're like, oh my gosh.
That's exactly what he did. He laughed when I said that. I was like, bro, everything you just did, it just like my brain exploded. And I think by the time I was trying to put this book to bed,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
was emotionally drained because
Well, that
just
was a
when you
crazy
think,
time,
yeah, that was a
in
crazy,
life to begin with.
yes. And
Yeah,
also just when you think you're done with the book, it's not done. You're like,
yeah,
dang it, this didn't actually finish, or this chapter
yeah,
can't be the last chapter. But then again, maybe that's the way books should be. They shouldn't end perfectly. Like from
yeah.
what I understand, the Vision Quest book
Hmm.
did not end like Vision Quest the movie. The Vision Quest
Huh.
book ends as Loudon and Shoot walking out onto the mat, and then the book ends. And so it's up to the reader
To
to
just go with it.
envision,
Yeah.
yeah, and imagine what could have happened. Because is Vision Quest about who won the match, or is Vision Quest about
Yeah.
everything that happened leading
Well,
up to
I
it?
don't want to give away too much of your book, so I won't say specifically what chapter or story, but I'll just say it this way to leave uh, some up to the reader, that something I appreciated was a bit what you're touching on, that for at least one of the stories I can think of right off the top of my head that I really enjoyed, the end of it was enough of a conclusion that I was like, oh, cool. And I kept turning the pages, but there was still a hint of like, I wonder what happened here, that left me thinking about it. So I think you did a
Yes.
nice job of blending those things. You didn't
Thank you.
completely chop it off. It's
Yeah.
not like it just stopped. There
Right.
was a conclusion to each story, but there's still a little bit of, I
There
wonder
has to be
wonder where
some
it
of
went.
that.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So
You
it
know
kept
why?
me thinking like, I wonder where this went.
I like
So
that.
I
But
think that's cool.
there has to be some of that. What happened?
Sure.
It says 5 powerful lessons. There's
Yeah.
probably at least 5 lessons in each story. So
Yeah.
it's up to the reader.
I was
What
going
do
to
you
ask you
feel
that
is most
because you got
important?
5 powerful lessons before chapters. And I was like, wait a minute, what's the fifth lesson here? Is he playing a
It,
trick on me?
it
But
could
then once I
be,
read it, I was
yeah,
like, oh, okay, there's plenty of lessons in everything. But
that's
as far
right.
as the
So it's up to the
style,
reader.
I can't really hold it up to the screen that well, but I'll just say in the Rudy chapter, for example, I think it's fun that it's not just straight paragraph after paragraph after paragraph. I think kind of like you're saying earlier on our conversation here about, you know, kids these days and how, the speed of things. You scroll through Instagram, boom, 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 boom. So I thought the Rudy chapter especially was pretty interesting because at one point when Rudy gets into in part 2, life and lifting lessons, you do this kind of style of things, which I don't know if you intended it that way or just shook out that way, where instead of paragraphs, you're going like sentence and then sentence and then sentence. So it kind of picks up
I think
speed
it's
in a way.
easier on the eyes. Like,
It
for
is.
example, if you read Dinosaur Training,
Uh-huh.
which I read, 20 plus years
Yeah,
ago,
yeah.
I can't even see the words anymore. It's
Yeah,
like too
it
small.
is. It's
So
dense.
I wanted the text to be a little
Uh-huh.
bit bigger.
Yeah.
I wanted it to be I wanted people to be able to flip it open to any page
Uh-huh.
and just start reading and not have to have a hard
Yeah.
beginning and end.
Sure.
And that's also how I write my morning emails, is
Uh-huh.
1 or 2 sentences, move on to the next thing. But although what's interesting is in Stephen Pressfield's book, some of his, quote unquote chapters is 1 sentence. But then I said that to my friend. He's like, yeah, you're not Stephen Pressfield.
Yeah, exactly.
So I was like, son of a bitch.
Well, you
When
do
he said
have
that.
though, you have some quotable things in here, and I think it reminded me, different stories reminded me of things that I learned at one point in my life, but it's not that I've forgotten them, but maybe I've gone astray and I'm like, I need to get
Yeah.
back to that. I need to get back to
Yes.
that discipline, or I need to get back to this, or like I was reading something, or even just all the protein shakes. Like your characters drink so many protein shakes.
So
I was
funny.
thinking it was getting me in the mood. I'm like, I've gotten lazy. I should really make like a good old fashioned protein shake in the blender, really mix it up like I used to.
It
I've gotten
was
lazy. So,
in Keys to Progress, they
uh-huh.
had the Get Big Drink.
Yeah, yeah.
And then if you read, of course, like as you know, the old strength and health magazines, they often, they were always selling these like protein shakes and,
Yeah.
but nothing was about get lean, get this. Everything was about get jacked, get huge, because today we're dealing with people being fat,
Yeah.
whereas decades and decades ago, everybody, the struggle was they were skinny. So
Mhm.
it's interesting how that has changed.
Oh
And of
yeah, it's
course, you know,
flipped.
I really hope that I hope that teenagers are going to pick this book up and read it and get motivated to train and to be
Yeah.
strong and to get back to the basics. Like, versus if I walk into a gym and I see a bunch of teenagers, we see a lot of kids on the phone, sitting on machines, laying around. I want to see kids squatting,
Yeah.
deadlifting, military pressing, going into the room where there's a heavy bag and doing 5 minutes on it. Like, I want that to come back to life.
I thought to myself, I had this idea a while ago, but then what you're speaking to, and especially the gyms in your book, would love this. When I was in the military, one of my career fields, I was an intelligence officer. So I worked in a classified environment, and a lot of the different places that I worked, in a classified environment, you're not allowed to have a cell phone at all to begin with. So they'd have these lockers, right? And it was like smaller than an apartment mailbox. It was the perfect size for a cell phone. Basically, you open up, it would have a key in it, just like, a public locker. And then you'd slip your phone in there, you'd take out the key, put it in your pocket. And then after you came out of the classified environment, you'd unlock it and get your phone back.
Love
So I
it.
thought to myself, man, that would be really cool to have these little phone lockers at a
Right.
gym.
Well,
Like if there was a gym that took a hard line out there, like, no, we're not doing any phones, no influencers,
you
no
don't
filming
get the
yourself.
phone back for an hour. Like,
Yeah, you
even if
don't.
you leave the gym in
Yeah,
30 or 45 minutes, that locker does not open up
no
for an
status
hour.
updates, no
Oh,
nothing.
beautiful.
Where people would go nuts is they would say, well, my coach is a virtual coach on my phone, or I have a program that's on my phone, or I'm doing Juggernaut AI or something on my
Sure.
phone.
I got to record.
So I
I
don't
got
know,
to
maybe the
record
lockers.
this. And
Yeah,
look, I,
maybe
I
the
get
lockers won't work then, but I've thought that.
they won't. I am embracing technology. I mean, I have to, as an
Yeah,
entrepreneur and a business owner. I'll utilize recording stuff to show an athlete, listen, you think you're squatting low enough? Watch these 3 reps. Or look, your one arm is here, your other arm is out here. This is an issue with,
yeah.
you're lacking external rotation. I don't know what you're talking about. Here's what I'm talking about. So it certainly helps. But as I write about, not in the book, but just in general, is we didn't see these, like, quote unquote, deficiencies and mobility problems decades ago. I
Yeah.
mean, maybe they were there, but I don't recall squatting or training with people who couldn't go low, who just, I think technology
Well,
made us weaker.
the training partner aspect of the book, as a
Yes.
home gym lifter, I started to get real got tied into that. Like, oh man, I do kind of miss that. I miss someone
Yeah.
like kind of motivating me, the back and forth. But that's where I do like having my phone. So I'm going to be a hypocrite here after bashing phones in the gym and say that if you're disciplined with your phone, I do like having it for that reason, that I'll be on a platform bouncing off someone else, their lifts, their ideas,
No doubt.
friends
Are
that I've
you in
made.
a
So
basement,
I
Rob,
am.
or a
Yeah. I'm a cellar dweller.
you need
So
to
yeah.
find a training partner. The cool thing
Yeah.
was, like, if I could recall growing up as a kid, you always saw, like, riding your bike around the neighborhood, garage doors were always open.
Yeah.
Men were always working in their garage on cars. They had friends with them. There was just, garages were like a alive place.
Yeah.
My friend lived with his grandma. So his grandma's, I guess that would have been like his step grandpa, was like a woodworker. He had like a
Yeah.
full wood shop in the garage. And then there would be like a little area where we had a curl bar. And so, or doing pull-ups outside of the garage on the
Yeah.
edge, not knowing we could rip off the siding. We didn't know those things, but garages were like places
So
where,
you're
like,
saying you ripped off some siding in your
I'm saying,
past?
like, damn, if I saw my son do that, I'd be like, what
Oh,
the F are you
yeah,
doing?
exactly. I'd be like, no, what? Come on,
But
man.
garages were just lively places. Now
Yeah, yeah.
we just don't see that. And so
This guy does a good job. My shirt.
the,
He
the no wine cellar.
the no wine cellar. It's not a commercial gym,
What is
but
it?
I'm gonna start doing what he does. So I'll give him full credit. His name's Keith Honeycutt, and he's up in Rochester, New York. and this is his home gym. It's not a business. It's called the No Wine Cellar, but he has an online presence, and he has only vintage York in his gym.
Wow.
So he has thousands of pounds of milled Yorks that he's collected. And he decided years ago, that's it. And nothing else. And then he has a full set of round heads in his gym. He's got some deep dish Yorks in his gym.
I like Keith Honeycutt.
Oh, yeah. Exactly. If you're ever in Rochester, stop by, because what he does is he has open gym times, and he'll post it on Instagram like, hey, open gym. Yeah. It's in his basement, the No Wine Cellar basement. So, and that's what I think I might do, is start posting, hey, open gym at the Vintage Weights PGH. If you're in Pittsburgh and want to stop by, hit me up. So he's made some friends for powerlifting and whatnot. And yeah, he has people come over, and he'll post pictures. Hey, I had 6 people in the gym today.
Oh wow. And I'm gonna look him up. You guys being up in the cold areas makes
that's why I like the basement instead of the garage.
Yeah.
So turn the heat on.
What's his name? Instagram?
The No Wine Cellar. Same as the shirt.
No Wine.
The No Wine Cellar. I can send it to you.
I see it.
But yeah, he's a power lifter, and he has he's got 3 different benches. Yeah, look
at everybody showing up.
Yep. Open gym at the No Wine Cellar. But I mean, how cool is that? I mean, if you can go lift at some gym that has thousands of pounds of York weights for free,
this basement,
that's a good friend.
Beautiful.
Or actually, Jen Thompson, a couple weeks ago, that episode of Home Gym History came out, and Jen Thompson was talking about how she has regular people that come and lift at her home gym. And I said, oh, do they pay dues or anything? And she said, no, they just, they'll bring over, a snack or something.
Right. Who's Jen Thompson?
Jen Thompson, the bench presser and power lifter. She has the women's, she's every world record you can think of in women's powerlifting. On
Squat University recently teaching the bench?
Yep.
That's her. Yeah.
That's her.
She's ripped.
She's incredible. And she just turned 50 years old, and she's benching more than most. She's still winning powerlifting competitions in regular class, not masters. And she's incredible. I love talking with her on Home Gym History. But yeah, so I might start doing that. I had the other day, Scott stopped by this, I'll send you the post for that too. He stopped by my gym, this bodybuilder, and it was just cool seeing him kind of interact with some of my stuff, because when you have a home gym, it's your stuff. But it's kind of cool to see him interact with it, with all the, like the vintage Criterion bar, for example, was a favorite of his. Yeah. And he was curling with it. He's like, oh, wow, yeah, I can like get my triceps activated down here, and I can do this. And he was pointing out stuff that I didn't really think through. Right. So yeah, I like having people come over, but I don't have a regular training partner, put it that way.
Yeah, my wife would be like, why are there 10 people here?
Yeah.
So
who's in our bathroom right now, Zach? What's going on?
Yeah, exactly. But that's how my business started, was out of the 2-car garage. That was the first house that we bought. Mm-hmm. And then before that, my parents' garage. I remember my dad being like, what is in the backyard? What is that? I'm like, oh, that's a chin and dip tower.
Yeah.
He was like, what is actually happening here? Chin and dip tower. Then there's people carrying stones. There's somebody else swinging an axe on a old tree stump. And I look back, I'm like, I can't believe I had kids swinging an axe. No insurance. Like, how dumb was I?
You're still here. It all worked out. But I probably not best.
I trusted that kids had swung an axe before. That was,
well, even crazy. Just some of the stuff like in your book with the job and, the part-time job and the guy kind of being mean to the kid. Yeah. In the pizzeria.
That happened.
My man, Luigi, I'll give him credit though. Luigi was a lot nicer than that guy. But I worked at Luigi's Pizzeria when I was a kid. And when I say kid, I mean teenager and in college. And this pizzeria, and Luigi, that's who I was picturing with that one, because Luigi would had this smile on his face with the patrons. Hey, how you doing? And then as soon as he come back to talk to us, he'd, what are you doing?
Oh, this guy was MFing me.
The difference though is that Luigi was like a father figure to me after a while. He ended up being like such a good influence on me. So completely different than your story. But your story with this guy, oh my gosh, not exactly a father figure.
Right. So it was a lot, pretty much that whole story is true.
Wow.
I'm not going to give away
Yeah,
the
yeah.
thing, but
Don't tell the whole story, but
what's
just that
interesting is my
it's
friend got
facing
me that job.
adversity, you know?
Facing adversity, learning to speak up. These are things, those are things that kids of today do not do. I always
No.
say, like, my kids are, my daughter's going to be 11th grade, my son will be 9th grade. Almost every day I'm bringing stuff to school and I'm thinking to myself, why am I doing this? Like, I was riding my bike to school at age 6,
Yeah.
riding to school. Can you imagine that? Like, nobody's like, oh, you forgot your lunch. Mom and dad are at work. You can't be helped,
Yeah.
like, and my kids. So that's why the lessons in there kind of, they span the ages. Like, they're good
Yeah.
for the teenager and adult men who may not be engaged in strength training are also lacking that confidence to speak up for themselves. And so my hope is that maybe an adult who hasn't lifted since high school,
Mhm.
whatever sport he was in, is now going to start lifting again and goes to the gym and starts doing 5 sets of 5 squat, bench, curling heavy,
Mhm.
things of that nature, and then builds confidence that has a positive impact on his life, whether it's
Yeah.
relationships, parenting, communicating at work. And I've seen it, like, men older than me lacking confidence, men a little younger than me don't know how to communicate. And so I hope this book shares many lessons of camaraderie,
Yeah.
teamwork, effort.
Beyond just the iron, there's those type of things.
The iron changed my life. I say it all the time. Yeah.
I that hits home with me, man, because I mean, it's funny. When I had nothing to lose, I was fearless. So when I was younger and I just
Right.
didn't have a penny to my name, didn't have a wife, didn't have kids, didn't own anything, didn't care what's going to happen to me.
Yeah.
Whereas now I've got a wife and kids to support. I've got a house with bills. I got a lot to lose. So now there is a little bit of fear in my life that didn't used to exist when I was younger. So all those things really hit home with me, even as a middle-aged
Fear
man.
gives you an edge. It
It
gives you,
does.
because your back is always a little bit against the wall.
Yeah, you got to fight. You got to stand up to adversity, and that's where, yeah, I think there's that connection between all the things you named, the camaraderie, teamwork, all those things, and the iron. And in your book, you go through, and we've talked about a little bit each of the stories, but you conclude with, I'm not going to say anything about it. I'm just going to say the title, and I'm going to tell people that they need to read the book. The title is Chapter 4, Warrior Man, the Ultimate Chapter. So, man, it didn't disappoint. And I am so stinking happy that it was in this. As soon as I opened the book and I got to the table of contents and saw the title of that chapter, I thought, oh boy.
My
I even
friend told me
considered
to do
skipping
it.
to it.
I
I
didn't,
even considered, I was
that
like,
was
oh, I might
right.
skip right to it. And then I was like, no, I'm going to read from the start to the end. And I was glad I did it that way. So I
Rob,
suggest readers don't skip to it. Like, read start to
that
end, but just
chapter,
know it's coming.
I gotta just say, that chapter was
So
not
good.
my idea.
Okay.
My friend Chris, who is the editor,
Yeah.
he knows that I had worked with the Ultimate Warrior
Mhm.
and that he was a influence to me when we worked together. And
We
so he
talked on
said,
Home Gym History about your relationship some. Yeah.
yeah. So he said, you have to, well, he's like, listen, I think there needs to be a chapter about the Ultimate Warrior. I think you need to call it this. And so he's like, just do it. And I can't remember how long it took me to write that chapter,
Mhm.
but I send him the chapter to edit and look over. And he's like, oh my God, I thought this was going to be a few pages. He's like, you wrote a whole nother book. And I'm telling you, without my buddy Chris,
That's great.
I would have just been like, some writing books when you're busy with work, family, this and that. And then you think it's done, and then you have more. Sometimes you just want to, Stephen Pressfield calls it pull the pin.
Yeah.
Pulling the pin is a analogy for if the train is together and
Mhm.
you want, like, the train to come apart, somebody pulls the pin and the whole thing falls
Disconnects.
apart,
Yeah.
disconnects. And I was like, oh man, Amazon won't do this. I can't do that. And then, you even have the money thing. Like, I got to pay for the I got to pay for the book design. I got to pay all this. You're losing money before you're making. anything. And it takes guts. It takes a lot of guts. And so when I am in that struggle mode, I'm always like, well, the lessons I've been taught, if I don't apply them, they're kind of lost in, I don't know how to phrase it or what the word is, but they're, it's almost like a disrespect to the people that taught me. It's also a complete, it's opposite of everything I teach athletes I work with, which is pivot, find another way. Don't just quit and give up. And if I quit, it's just, how can I tell others to be tough through tough times? I can't, because I'm a quitter. So finishing this book was like a mental and emotional victory.
It's it's going to proudly be part of my gym and part of my library, and I guarantee you my 4 children will be reading this when they come of age.
Great.
I was already thinking through. I mean, I hadn't even made it through Rudy yet, and I was thinking, I wonder, my oldest is 9. Well, there's some stuff in here. I guess, he reads a lot. Maybe when he's 12. Yeah, I'll give it to him when he's 12. I was thinking through, like, when am I going to give this to my kids? So that's how much I like it, man.
That's a great age. That's when I started reading.
Yeah.
My brother, well, I had read Arnold's encyclopedia, while in elementary school, but just flipping through the pages. But then I started reading his magazines and books around 6th grade, age 11, 12. And then by high school, that's when I really consumed Arnold's education of a bodybuilder every single day through high school. And so I entered high school at age 13. So, it depends on the maturity level of a kid, but the book hopefully will inspire forever. Like, meaning I'm showing you Bob Hoffman books from the 50s.
Yeah.
That's 80 years ago, right? So hopefully this book lives on well beyond my years on earth.
I hope so too. And viewers, I'll drop a link for the book, like I said, in the description. Go check it out. You've heard a lot about it, but I think we did a pretty good job of not telling the book. You're going to get so much more out of it. You can find Zach as well in the description. I'll drop all the links to Underground Strength and his various social profiles and things like that. And when it comes to this book and just book reviews in general, the reason I had you on, Zach, was that I read a lot, and something I thought about doing recently was book reviews for some of the books that I really enjoy. And then I realized, oh, wait a minute, like David Willoughby, super athletes, that's going to be a tough one, but I could probably just ask Zach to come on here and talk about it. So thank you for coming on. Thank you for talking through this. This was so much more enjoyable than sitting down and writing a book review. So I appreciate it.
I had a great time chatting, Rob, as always. And thank you for everybody listening and anybody who picks up the book. Grateful, very grateful.
All right. Thanks so much, Zach.